Call to order this meeting of the Southfield Redevelopment Authority Board of Directors. The first item on the agenda is the minutes from the January 16th, 2019 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? God abstaining? No worries. The next item is the January 30th, 2019 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chris abstaining?
I was here remote.
Oh, you're right.
Right.
That's my
I
bad.
did not.
So that's unanimous. And then the next item is the February 20th, 2019 meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then I'm abstaining. The next item on the agenda is permit granting authority, public hearing that was noticed. It's an application for site approval for the Stonebridge Homes at Union Point. I'll turn it over to Jim to help lead us through this discussion.
Thank you. I want to introduce Muhammad Aitani, representing Stonebridge Homes, and ask Muhammad to introduce his team that's with him tonight and provide a brief presentation to the board.
Well, good evening. My name is Muhammad Aitani. I'm with Stonebridge Homes in Easton. I have with me Dave Horstman and Tony Esposito. They're both engineers, and they both have been helping us develop this plan. So I'll be turning it over to Dale. He can go over the site plan, the street layout, and then I'll be more than happy to answer any architectural questions and stuff like that, or construction questions for that matter.
Thanks, Tony. As Tony said, I'm Dale Hoisman with VHB, engineering firm out of Watertown. So Stonebridge is located just north of the recreational center on the east side of Memorial Road, just a little bit ways down the street. Prior development approval, prior board approvals included the development plan and the definitive subdivision approval in July of 2017. Construction of the definitive subdivision began in October of 2018. And we revised the definitive subdivision in February of 2019 to raise the profile and grade of the roadways. So since, let's see, since that approval, the design team has focused on developing the 45 single-family home lots, which consist of a mix of 3 to 4 bedroom units. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Tony to go over just a little bit about the architectural aspects in the lot development. Sorry, Tony.
Yeah, no problem at all. So,
I can.
so what we're basically looking at, what we're targeting in this subdivision is really a mixture of families as well as empty nesters. So we have in front of you four designs, but some of them have a first floor master bedroom, some of them have a second floor master bedroom. And the idea is to have a nice mix in the neighborhood where nowadays 2/3 of new home sales are going to empty nesters, and that's a national trend, and Stonebridge is a local developer. We basically work in the South Shore. We currently have 4 subdivisions on the Route 3 corridor, 4 subdivisions on the 24 corridor, and 4 on the 95 corridor, mostly between 128 and 495. So we're really local in this area. We've done subdivisions in Abington, Whitman, Rockland. We currently have 1 in Norwell and 3 in Pembroke. So those are the closest subdivisions to us over here. Most of the houses that we're proposing are gonna be around 2,200 square feet to 2,700 square feet. The majority of them are 3 bedrooms. Probably our average is gonna be 3 bedrooms. We might have 20% that are gonna be 4 bedrooms, but the majority are gonna be 3 bedrooms. And that's really what's nowadays. I mean, that's even houses that we're selling in other neighborhoods that are 4 bedrooms, people are turning them into 3 bedrooms, rather be their master bedroom or, this specific design, we try to have farmers porches, variation of material in the front. We extensively use stone, shingles, and then regular siding. We always try to have farmers porches. In this specific design, we thought we'll target a multi-generational family. So we do have a first floor master bedroom, or a first floor bedroom. So that's kinda, close to the entrance by itself. Somebody can use it as a study, or can use it as a guest room, or if the needs start giving you a hard time, you can start moving the bedroom down here. So coming in, what you see is basically kitchen, dining area, as well as living room. Going up to the second level, this design is missing a bathroom here. So this was an early design. So there's a bathroom in this area. So we have 2 bedrooms, as well as a good-sized master bedroom, walk-in closet, as well as the master bathroom over here. To the elevation. This is the typical elevation. You can see the shingles over here, farmer's porch. We have some vertical siding, as well as some horizontal siding. And it's fairly, we're limited on the width of our houses and the depth of our lots. We attempted to put the garages in the back. We couldn't. Our lots are narrow, are not as deep, so it will not allow us to do what Dorset Estates did, which is very attractive. We attempted to do that, we couldn't do it. So we had no option. So our elevations usually have lots of volumes, and we like the lower roof lines. It's more welcoming, and it's a warmer, feel to a house. So this is one of the designs. This other design is, again, we have like a portico in the front. Coming in, you have a study, a flex room, which basically can serve as a dining room if somebody wants a formal dining room. Have our kitchen, breakfast area, and the family room, and the master bedroom on the first level. Second level, we have 1 bedroom and an optional loft. This could be a theater room, a billiard room, rather than people finishing their basement. They can have that, like a finished second level. So this specific design is 2 bedrooms actually and a study. When Dale mentioned something about we had to come back in front of the board after the original design was approved. We actually raised the profile of the road around 5 feet on average. The reason is, once we started looking closer at the site, we found that there's a high water table. In many cases, it's around 3 feet below grade. So we raised our road, and our elevation, our top of foundation will be another 3 feet above the road. So that gave us 8 feet for our footings. We will always be around 2 to 3 feet above the water table. Our typical house would have a French drain around the house, a sump pump, as well as a radon pipe, just to make sure in the future somebody detected radon, then all the work has been done. You only have to add a fan to try to do that. We do all the standard stuff as well, vapor barriers, and waterproofing around the foundation and stuff like that. So this is the elevation of this this is the elevation of this specific house. You know, the reason the back has a lot of roof line because the second floor is much smaller than the first floor. That's since the master bedroom is in the back. Again, we're using a combination of material. And, this is like a trellis over here above the garage. You know, we have the vertical siding as well as the horizontal siding. And again, the lower roof line, which is, we try to always have that in ours. A third design, have a small porch over here, another one with a first floor master bedroom. So again, coming in, you always this living room, dining room, kitchen, open space concept that everybody is looking to build nowadays. You know, a study, again, especially when you have a first floor master bedroom. A lot of people are working out of their houses nowadays, and it's always good to give them a flexible room that they can use it for whatever purpose they want. So as you're coming in, you know, you have your staircase that takes you well, this is the master bedroom over on this side. So from the garage coming in, I have my laundry room. We have a sitting area, like a bench, and then coming in, you can choose to go to the family room or into the master bedroom. Walk-in closet as well as a bathroom. Going upstairs, this design has 2 bedrooms upstairs, and we have an open loft area. Loft area cannot be turned into a bedroom since there are no windows there. They can't have a bedroom without windows. So, yeah, so we have the open foyer, the loft area, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. Elevation of the house, in this case, we're proposing some stone. We have, you know, the portico cover, shingles on top. We try to use those triangular vents all the time in the front of the house. It just adds another dimension and another look for the house. A third design, you know, I have a porch over here, a covered porch. Coming in, study, the open concept area, laundry room, walk-in pantry, my kitchen. And this is like a 2.5 car garage or a 3-car garage. You know, a lot of people have a small little car that they've had it, you know, or their dream car when they were teenagers, so they got to keep it, and they want to, you know, work on it. So we thought this standard garage would help somebody who has a need for more than 2-car garages. Going upstairs, the standard thing, we have the 2 bedrooms with a bathroom. Somebody can choose to add a 3rd bathroom if they want to. This bathroom can become part of this bedroom. And then, you know, we usually work with our home buyers and customize their houses on the inside as well. If somebody comes in, they want to change things around, we actually work with them. We have an in-house designer that works with the homeowner and make sure that, you know, that the house of their dreams, you know, ends up being their dream house. Master bedroom, our standard, you know, walk-in closet, bathroom, and you know. So this house is around 2,700 square feet, and that's the typical size house that we're proposing. Have one more. Elevation of the house, again, this one here, we're using shingles. Now, sometimes people, at their option, they can replace the shingles with stone. Sometimes the stone goes halfway out, doesn't necessarily go all the way out. We try to discourage people from going with stone all the way out, just because it makes the house too heavy, and just like it looks like the house wants to sink in the ground or something. So usually there's a small window here that we don't have, but there's usually, to fit in this big area, we usually put a small window there. Landscaping. I guess Tony can pick up on the landscaping and what, yeah, go ahead, please.
What should the entry price point that you're shooting for?
We're probably gonna be in the upper sixes, mid sevens. We haven't finalized that yet. We expected that we will be building houses by now. But since we had to go back, redesign the road, and some of the utilities that we encountered on Shea Memorial were not actually on the plans, so we had to go back again and redesign some of those utilities and the water lines and some of the sewer lines, move them around to make sure. And we've been working with Jim and, DPW, so they're on the site, DPW is on the site all the time. And we sometimes work on Saturday, and they requested and we accepted that we would pay for the employees overtime and for their presence on Saturday. So anytime we're working, we inform DPW, they send us somebody to be on the job site, and Stonebridge pays for that.
And the siding and other materials are composite, hardy plank or another?
For this neighborhood, what we're finding is that even in neighborhoods that we offer hardy plank, people don't want anything that needs to be painted. It's
Well, there's
maintenance
pre-painted
free.
hardy plank.
It's pre-painted, but then in 10 years you have to repaint it.
So is it wood or
It's fine.
vinyl?
Yeah.
Really?
Even the shingles in the front are vinyl.
Do you have you probably don't have a make or manufacturer or a sample or anything like that?
We did submit that. I think we used, for our shingles, Georgia Pacific, for ours. We submitted a sample,
Want
right?
me to grab the samples?
If the board chooses them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can grab the samples. I wasn't sure if you'd have one as well.
Any other questions you have?
I do have a question. You're gonna raise the elevation 5 feet
The roadways.
for the roadways. All that fill is being brought in from someplace?
It is.
It is. How is that gonna affect the water table surrounding that?
It shouldn't affect the water table surrounding it, because the water, we're not changing the elevation of the water table. The water table is gonna stay where it is. We're just raising our houses and our road so that we're outside the water table, we're above the water table.
I think we talked about it one of the meetings, was it one of our conservation filings? We talked about them raising their
We
grade.
spent a pretty decent amount of time
It was approved, yeah.
on this, and we approved it.
Yes.
Doesn't
Okay.
affect the runoff.
Yeah. There was no change in stormwater runoff.
No,
Yes.
Because we did this with the conservation committee, and we also did it with the.
Site plan. We did an amended site
Yeah,
plan.
the site plan.
Okay.
and actually, Conservation Commission wanted to see us raise the houses. So they actually, they were encouraging us to do that. So before we did that, we had an informal meeting with the, board members and then, or board representatives.
Yeah, we did ask for that, if you guys remember, because around the same time we were addressing all the residents in Dorset Park who were displeased with what had happened with the basements there. So this was really in response to our request, if they were going to build full basements, to raise them, and then they also added the French drains and some of the waterproofing, the sump pump as standard features on the houses to help prevent that problem from happening again.
Can I ask, and I don't know if you know, maybe the engineer, but with your French drains, you use the Schedule 20, or do you use Schedule 40, or do you use the black corrugated?
Black corrugated.
Because that we've seen run into issues in that other development when you get in French drains or downspout drains. I don't think the price difference is that much, I don't even think there's a price difference, but the Schedule 20 thin wall, regular, 10-foot pieces of pipe, not the rolls of corrugated. We see the rolls of corrugated, they change elevation easily in trench.
Or
And
segmented
Yeah.
sections of pipe.
Yeah.
What we usually do is that we put them at the edge of the footings.
Okay,
And then when we put the crushed stone, so you have the pipe protected by the footing, so early on, before we start putting the crushed stone back, the last 8 inches, we actually put the pipe against the footing, so it will be nice and secure in
Okay.
place and protected.
okay. What about downspout drains then? Are you doing downspout drains, or is that just
The,
run?
the downspout drains, those will be actually scheduled for.
Okay,
It goes under the driveway, it's scheduled for.
okay, and what about your sump pump, where does that go to, does that go to a flow well
It's
system?
actually no, because we're not expecting our sump pumps to be working. I mean,
Okay.
There's no reason for them to be working, we're gonna be a big distance.
Yeah,
But in case of a flood like the ones we got in '09,
yeah,
where we got two
Everybody got
50-year
water.
storms, yeah, everybody got water. But at least we would have some protection in a.
where would those be piped to though?
And it just exit outside the house.
Okay, okay.
Where is it pumped in?
Outside the house, same as the other ones in the neighborhood.
So it'll be picked up, overland runoff into the infrastructure.
And the downspout drains, I should ask that earlier, into like flow wall systems, is that stone pits, how are those?
No, we do have, leaching chambers in the back of the yards.
Oh, okay, Okay.
In lieu of those, leaching, of the,
flow wells,
flow wells, yes.
okay.
We have an extensive system behind all the houses.
So, yeah, we have these chambers that are located in the backyards there.
Okay,
So all drainage stays on site on the lot?
That's correct.
Pulte's all vinyl, isn't it? Pulte's all vinyl. Mine, I think mine.
The Pulte development is all vinyl,
That's right. We
Yeah,
don't- we
including the
don't put it in
condominiums.
He just said it, yeah. I'm just making sure, I don't know what my house
It's
is.
an allowed, it's an allowed siding material.
But not in Highlands,
It is.
there's vinyl in the Highlands?
There's not vinyl in the Highlands, but I don't think
It's
that
not
that's because it's a
prohibited.
prohibited material, that's
Okay.
just because the developers in the Highlands all did the hardy plank.
Correct.
See, I just remember that we used to have an external inspection about symmetry or asymmetry of window placement and stuff. Do we still have that review board process?
We're gonna get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yep, the same process is still in place.
Okay.
Okay, my name's Tony Esposito. I'm an engineer also representing Stonebridge. The landscape architect was unable to attend today, so I'm gonna do my best to play him on TV. The landscape architect obviously concentrated on landscaping at the entrance of the property over at Memorial Grove Hall, Memorial Grove Ave. We have a mixture of deciduous and evergreen trees, and we have one species of flowering tree, and those are concentrated on the boundaries of this open space land here, and we've got one over here as well. We have lots of shrubs as well, mostly concentrated around the bus shelter here. This right here is going away per the recommendation of Jim Young. Those are the only 2 trees that we're missing. And as you may have seen from the subdivision plans, there are also going to be street trees as well going along. Those will be in the right of way. These are concentrated off the right of way here. This is an open space area here, which you can see is heavily treed and shrub to screen lot 1. And we have a lot of trees, and we have a mixture of evergreens. This is a deciduous. And these right here are the existing trees that exist on Memorial Grove right now. So this area right here, most of the shrubs in this area here are there to protect the drainage pipe underneath. We can't put any trees over it, they've asked us not to, so there's gonna be a concentration of shrubs along the pipeline here. So that's pretty much it. I have with me, passing around photos of what some of the species would look like if you have a question about one of the particular species or where it is.
Can you go back to the plan that shows this street landscape?
The first one.
So, when we were in front of the planning board in Weymouth, they requested that we add evergreens to this section here to try to screen those houses from the sports complex. And we agreed to that. There's a wetland system over here, so there's a tree line that's heavily treed in this area, which that's gonna be protected. And then once the tree line ends here, we're gonna continue with, we're gonna choose something that's more evergreen, something that creates a permanent screen as opposed to some of the flowering trees, which, in the winter we won't have any screen. So and that's in the decision, right? Is that, it's gonna be written in the decision, or I'm not sure how the process works. We're gonna be proposing them on the plans?
Yes.
Right.
yes.
Meet with the board.
Right, well, we have received, today we did receive two comment response letters back from the applicant responding to all the technical comments. And all of those responses will be incorporated into a final set of plans typically if the project is approved, we would give the applicant 2 weeks to turn around a final set of plans for the record. And so that's in the standard terms and conditions of your approval if you so choose to approve the project.
Any questions from the board? All right. Questions from the public?
Just one question. Do you worry about the afterglow from the sports complex domes? You know, if the lights stay on too late, is there gonna be some conflict there in terms of its encumbering, interacting with the houses? You know, that was noted by several people in the Highlands that they wondered what it would be like to live close to it. Now, I know you're putting a barrier, so I don't want that to hurt your market.
The good part is that the sports complex is up. So nobody's gonna come to us, oh, you didn't tell me that I'm gonna have lights.
Okay.
That's the good part, because the last thing you wanna do is to surprise people after they move in. Suddenly there's a road behind their house that they didn't know about. The good thing is that, at least everything on this side, people know exactly what's going on. People understand that those two roadways, if the Coast Guard property became available for development, that those two roadways are gonna continue and loop back up. Now that's of course gonna come in front of the board, and the board is gonna approve any extension to those roadways. In this section here, there's some open space that's left between us and the neighboring property, right? There's some open space left over here as well. So, like I said, we're gonna have that, but people have to know, people are gonna know going in that that's what's there.
Now, if they complain, those people, and, the sports complexes, domes, stay open all night, or, it depends on the demand, will that create a problem down the road? Will they be required to turn off the lights, let's say, during the, who knows? I'm just trying to
I think the
anticipate.
lighting's generally a safety issue. For a certain amount of time following the end of any event, the lights have to be on to have those domes up, and so the sports complex complies with those.
With those regulations?
With those
Do you know what those
regulations.
are offhand, or are they open till 11 o'clock, or 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock?
In terms of the hours I'm not sure. I think it sometimes varies depending on the type of the tournament, but I'm pretty sure the lighting is connected to when an event ends. There's a certain amount of time afterward. It has to be
We use like 30 minutes in Weymouth after.
It probably is that. I think it was modeled off of Weymouth to let people get out safely from the bubbles, have the bubble lit, and then the lights go off.
So you don't think it would be 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock at night?
I mean, given what those are used for, I doubt that there will be those types of tournaments going until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay,
I mean, could there be a
just
game that goes into a lot of overtime at some point? Right, but I don't.
I have to say, Lindsay, that late at night, I can see the glow of the dome out my back window, and I'm in Dorset Park. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like, if I can see it here and there's a whole bunch of trees behind me, I thought when they were putting in this development, what is it gonna be like for people up there? So, you've said that, Steve. It is a concern. You might wanna see what the hours are. And nobody's using the domes at that time. They just seem to be lit up late at night.
There is gonna be some.
Just so you
That's
know.
just, it's inefficiency.
I think we're getting a little bit,
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
nothing, there's nothing we can do about it, I mean.
I think we can research and find out.
If you're buying next to it, you see it there,
Sure.
It's great, you're not putting
it's
this
a
in.
pre-existing
But it
condition.
does bring up a good point, are there
They
regulations here
bought
for
the
like
house
lighting
knowing it's there.
after
It's
certain
not-
hours?
Yeah, but if they're buying the house in the middle of the
Okay,
day
fair enough.
and they don't see the lights on,
It's-
yeah.
It's policy, but, you know.
Anybody who can afford that type of
Right,
house should
but
be able to.
They like to spend money on
And most
Monday,
people,
Wednesday.
when they visit
Not
the
solar
site
powered, right?
almost daily, on their way back from work, almost everybody stops by to see it, what's going on and what their house is. And, you know, typically people make multiple visits before they buy houses.
And in the winter, they're lit up at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so I presume most people will notice it.
Can I just throw in for, I live near a public building and
Yeah.
current technology for parking area, so that what would be abutting these is downlighting, which is much, much better, much more efficient, not intrusive to an environment. It's separate from the issue of the bubble being lit up, but the actual
Yeah.
parking lot is very, very focused on the parking for downlighting.
Can just one other question, I'm sorry, but it's so important. Could you just review how cars are parked and that sort of stuff in your, I guess your first, yeah,
So what we're doing is that every house is gonna have 2 car garages.
okay.
And our
Visible
driveways,
from the front road, from the road.
and, say that again, please?
Visible from the road, the garage door will be visible from the road.
We don't have a choice.
Rather than coming around behind, okay.
We can't, we couldn't,
No,
because
no, I
if you look
understand.
at the lots are not deep enough.
Mohammed, I understand.
But what we did is that all our driveways are at least 22 feet long, so which will allow even in case,
Okay.
you know, more parking out on the street. I'm assuming the homeowners association will eventually have no overnight parking on the street. Most neighborhoods have that. You know, every now and then you're gonna get somebody that doesn't abide, homeowners association sends them a notice and, you know, they'll keep a car on the street for too long. So each house basically have four cars to park. We have a small parking area here, we have this open space and we have another open space. So we added a couple of parking spots, overflow party or something like that, so people
Oh,
can.
good. And they also have the recreation complex, they will park over.
You're right, you're absolutely right. So if somebody having having a big
Okay.
party. And then again, part of the landscaping, we put a bus shelter over here, just it's a nice protection, it's a.
So were there extra spaces for your lease office, for your office where you were gonna show your model home?
I mean,
that
what we'll probably do is we will build a couple of houses, furnish them, and those become our models. That's how it typically works. A construction trailer, usually we pick up one of the lots, we put a construction trailer on it.
One iteration I remember seeing, it seems to me you were at the edge of the loop there, and there was a half circle drive, so that's gone?
That's gone. Actually, it's gonna be just like that. It's like a small bubble that was in this area, but Jim requested and it got removed.
Where's your mailboxes gonna be? Where's your roof cluster?
But the cluster is gonna be somewhere in this open space. That's where the parking too, so people can come in, probably somewhere here. You know, it's close to the entrance, so on the way in and the way out.
When do you anticipate beginning sales?
Probably in 2 to 3 months. I mean, we're getting, it's amazing how much this place is attracting people. We don't even have a sign up, we don't have our telephone number up. You'll be amazed at the number of phone calls and the list of interest that we already have in the office for people that are waiting for us to finalize the models as well as finalize the pricing as well. When we were in front of the board, the fire department requested that all those houses be sprinkled, which we agreed to, so all of those houses will have a sprinkler system, fire sprinkler system.
Any additional questions from the board or the public? I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining? We have in front of us a motion. I'll read the motion. That the permit granting authority approve with conditions the application for site plan approval submitted by Rockland Meadows LLC for the Stonebridge Homes at Union Point project, and to waive the following requirements of the architectural and urban design guidelines. And after we go through these, we can ask Jim questions about them. Section 3.353, each floor of any building facade facing open space or a street shall contain transparent windows encompassing a minimum of 15% of the wall area. This waiver shall only apply to side elevations. All front and rear elevations shall comply with the requirement. Section 7.41, residential garages shall be positioned no closer to the street than 20 feet behind the principal plane of the building frontage. Section 7.42, two-car garages with one single door shall not be used except on alleys. Section 7.43, garage doors shall not exceed 10 feet in width, and the driveway shall be a maximum of 10 feet wide in front of the principal plane of the building. Section 7.44, garages facing a street are limited to one car width. Section 7.45, garage doors shall face the side or rear, not the front of the building.
I do have a question. I did not pick up on it, I guess. So single car garage, when you say like a double car single door is not something that is allowed. Is that what I understood?
That's correct. Under our design guidelines, if you have a two-car garage, you're supposed to have two doors.
I mean, the problem with, those lots are narrow. A typical single door garage, you can live with 22 feet wide. When you go to two separate doors, you can still do it 22 feet wide, but the middle strip will be this big.
If I could point out, we're waiving that though.
Oh,
We're waiving.
You're asking for a
Okay.
waiver
I
of
thought that
that?
was a
Yeah.
condition. My
Yeah.
mistake. That's why I didn't pick up on it before, I guess.
Mohammed, you asking for a waiver?
And you,
But the door is being, can I see in the elevation though, the door is being designed,
It has
so it looks
some
like, it looks like
texturing
two
to it.
doors.
It does. I mean,
Yeah.
trying to minimize the way it looks, the
Right.
bulkiness of it, and that's the intent.
So aesthetically, it looks like it is two separate units.
That's correct.
I live in one of the houses with the two separate small ones. It's difficult. You can't get your garbage cans in and out on trash day
Yeah.
without pulling a car out, so it's prettier.
I'll
But it's
second the
big.
motion.
All right, so the motion's on the table. Do we have any questions for either the developer or for Jim, who's reviewed these requests for us? They're surprisingly self-explanatory compared to some of the ones we get.
Yes, and we've seen these all before, so there's no precedent that would be set in this case.
Great.
Motion.
No,
Let's get a
we have a
second.
motion and a second.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
The next item is the Conservation Commission Order of Conditions Extension Request, Phase 1A Definitive Subdivision Plan. This relates to Fairing Way. Jim, you can give some background here.
So the Phase 1A order of conditions was originally tied to Memorial Grove Avenue and Parkview Street and vicinity. It encompassed a very large area of the project. And as the board will recall, so did the Phase 1A definitive subdivision plan. And we've revised that plan many times over as different subdivisions, different areas of the highlands, et cetera, have been built out. As you know, certain projects have lagged, particularly Fairing Way, and some of the improvements that were tied to that order of conditions have not been constructed yet. Generally speaking, we're referring to trail systems or final finished condition of the edges along the forested areas. Dorset Park being one of those edges that I'm referring to. So we've kept the permit open. Unfortunately, there has not been any progress recently. But the good news is with Fairing Way Phase 2 under construction and Dorset Park now completed for the home construction. We're certainly looking to hopefully have that work completed within the next year or two, once construction particularly has ceased at Faring Way. Generally, completion of the trail west of Faring Way, west of the cottages, actually within the wetland complex itself as a boardwalk. Those are two areas that we're still focusing on, and completion of final grading and stabilization at Dorset Park. Although the property...
Where in particular at Dorset Park, at the end near Faring Way or throughout the project?
Generally throughout, but more towards the central and northern end of the Dorset Park area where there was initially some peat removal. But generally speaking, the permit runs with the property. And we're looking at the current owner, in that case is Northland, to complete proper grading and stabilization that would be required under any order of conditions. And so the intent is, the request is to extend the existing permit for 2 additional seasons with the hope that the remaining improvements will be completed by their respective property owners.
Is
It
the
seems like things like the grading, there's nothing stopping that from happening, right? I mean, I'm just out of curiosity, I mean, I understand why you wouldn't complete a trail system and boardwalk when there's still active construction going on adjacent to it, why you wouldn't finish, why the grading wouldn't be finished. Tom, you signed this letter to me.
Yeah,
Is there a reason?
the grading for the Dorset Park, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's more of a Northern question, but I don't know why they haven't.
Have they communicated with you about their delinquency on this, or have you asked them about it?
I haven't. Tom Berkeley and Elster, by the way, the last conversation I had with Northland was probably 2 months ago, and prior to that, it had been a year or so. And the purpose of that, in full disclosure, was to address ongoing issues that we were hearing about, water, finishing some of the work, and irrigation. Yeah, no, irrigation was a strip of irrigation, correct. So a variety of items, finishing some of the work, frankly not specific to the order of conditions, but just finishing the project, addressing the issues, and the purpose of that was to have someone from Northland come in front of the SRA. Basically what we were saying is you need to address this. We can't interfere with some of the items, but as the master developer and as someone who is receiving emails and calls, we said it would be in your best interest to address some of these things. The grading is one of them, but at the time it was not directly related to that. But I haven't had any correspondence since then.
So I don't understand how this order of conditions.
I had the opportunity to meet with Sean Scahill of Northland on February 28th to review the open items on the bond that are tied to their subdivision approval, as well as the open items on the order of conditions that runs with the property that's tied to a portion of the common areas behind the homes. And now that we're officially in spring and the weather seems to be turning, we'll be inspecting both areas and coming up with a current punch list for Northland to address this season, and that's our expectation under these existing permits.
So I believe the inspection in the punch list was done at our expense, I assume, by Steve Ivas in last spring. Is that not correct?
A year has gone by now, so we'll be revisiting it again to.
So it'll be the same punch list. So the builder in that case, this may be outside of the scope of this hearing, but I have another question directly relevant. The builder has announced that they're turning over all of the property, including the property in question, to the HOA, which the HOA is refusing to take, but I don't really know where that will go. But is this order of conditions, I don't understand really how this even affects the Northland property. It's confusing, like I don't care about the boardwalk, like how does this, why are we granting a waiver that includes any Northland property, or does it not?
The Phase 1A order of conditions was tied to a very large area of property and included the area within the Dorset Park project. And as stated, it runs with the property, so once that piece of property was transferred to Northland, Northland took up the final obligations of that permit. If Northland subsequently transfers that property to the local HOA, it then becomes the local HOA's obligation to complete the permit obligations.
So as a municipal authority, I mean, with an HOA with 26 homes, the answer to that question is to go get a lawyer and fight Northland based on a municipal transfer of land which hasn't been completed. And I'm a novice at this, but, you know, really? Are we not the public authority that?
But can we use the bond that's the?
Okay, I was going to ask that.
There is no bond on the order of conditions,
Okay,
only on the subdivision approval, which is tied generally to the right of way. And the
Okay.
public improvements, where the order of conditions is generally tied to the private improvements.
Do we have an option here other than extending all of the conditions on the 1A definitive subdivision plan? Could we require Northland to do the work in this season to be in compliance? And grant the extension on things like the boardwalk trail and the finishing of the trails around Berry Way?
Yes, you could parcel it out that way, certainly.
I'm Heidi Anderson, I'm a
So I can't take public comment
darn it.
during.
Well, after the meeting, I mean, after the end. you can.
At the end, I absolutely can, I
Okay.
just can't take it in the middle of an agenda item unless it's a public hearing, which our first item tonight was a public hearing, so
Oh,
I
since you
apologize.
asked Tom, and I'm a trustee today, I got an email from Northland yesterday, because I just wanted to make a comment that could be relevant.
Sure, go ahead, through the chair, you can let us know what you
Okay,
heard as a
so
trustee.
yesterday, all the trustees got an email from Northland basically saying that we needed to sign something because they wanted to turn it over to us April 1. And they haven't complied with a lot of the things that we have asked of them. They basically insinuated that they have dissolved the little shell company or whatever that was running our HOA. So we're kind of in a bind right now.
can we, Madam Chair, can we ask that Northland come in for our next meeting, and then we divide this up, or to Jim, that we divide this up? We divide.
I think that might be proper, because what I would love to do is force Northland to do this work. What I don't wanna do is divide this out and deny the extension on the order of conditions and then force the HOA to have to comply with it in this season, right? I mean, that would be a really bad situation for everyone if they were able effectively to transfer the land to the HOA and we did something to sort of require the work in this building season. We're putting a short-term burden on 26 homes.
So I agree with that, but there's actually two separate issues, as I understand it, in that we can do that, which would be helpful, but the second part, which the board may have no control over, is they've dissolved the HOA, or they've dissolved their control of the HOA, according to them at least, so.
But they still have a bond on the.
Very little,
But
almost nothing, I mean.
it's on the public way, I mean, let's see if they respond.
So it sounds like they're still in open communication with Jim, so it seems like that's an effective way to address some of these issues with them. And,
My concern is that the permit has essentially expired and would like to keep it alive, not only for the Northland piece, but some of the property that may or may not still be owned by L-Star.
Because we don't wanna see them.
Timeframe just to.
Can you do a short term?
that's fine, so can we extend it for 30 days, 60 days?
Yeah, let's do that.
And then revisit?
You can certainly do that, you have your discretion up to including 3 years, so.
Paul, what's your take on that?
We can extend it, sure. Let's amend the
So
time.
let's extend it for 30 or 60 days. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Does the responsibility at the end of the 30 days, assuming that Northland has successfully just foisted this land on the HOA, which I don't really know if they have the right to or not, assuming they've done that, will this revert back to their responsibility at the end of the 30 days or not?
It'll run with the land ownership.
What's that?
It will run with the land ownership. So if they've successfully foisted it on the HOA will be responsible for completing the
Yeah.
order of conditions.
So this is like an epic failure of public protection on that land, no matter how you slice it. I don't really pretend to understand the specifics of how it can happen, but
It should have been bonded.
we've got a huge,
But that was the problem. Sean, when he appeared before this board right here, lied about the irrigation system. And that frees, the money. Sorry.
that's like the small potatoes here. There's a according to the IVIS.
All right, I'd rather keep public
According to the IVIS
to
report,
public comment.
I'm sorry, there's giant issues with that back property, and that's a significant potential liability for 26 homes going forward. So I don't really know what you do to protect, or if there is a public way to protect homeowners, but it is an epic failure on the part of this entity.
So we have a
to allow it to
conservation
happen.
violation, don't we have a conservation violation on them against the work they did on
We're-
that
we're
back
not-
area?
it's an
Or
open-
do we?
It's open.
We
This
have not
permit
brought,
had-
we have not brought Mr. Ivis's findings to the board for consideration or action at this time, and we will be visiting the site in the very near future to come up with a current punch list, as well as the roadway to come up with a current punch list, and a recommendation for the board to move forward with.
So should we just continue this then?
I think in 90 days though, it's good, I just put it, 90 days, I mean, even a year, I mean, at this point, you gotta get through this growing season, if you can get the stuff over the top. In a year, I mean, to have to keep refiling permits every 90 days.
I'd like to see it at 90 days at the most, because I think there's a lot of concern about getting the work done. So north of Homes, Dorset Park is completely finished. They're an isolated neighborhood with no reason why this work can't be done. I think that if there's a hook to get Northland to do it, we should try to get it done sooner rather than later.
It makes them revisit it in 90 days.
Yeah.
Get
But-
it-
90 days
but-
to revisit.
Just on the permit though, just so I understand, I mean, not renewing this permit's not gonna force Northland to do that work. As I understand it from what Jim said, that this is encompassing a large scale area on top, including, and some things is just not gonna be done within this timeframe.
That's correct. But within 90 days, we should have a clear path forward.
And within, I
Yeah.
think the idea was
Yeah,
within 90
yeah,
days,
I'm
we
okay
would
with
know
90
how
days.
we could divide it.
Yeah.
There's certainly, a vast majority of the land covered by this is going to get a 2-year extension.
Right.
But I think 90 days would give us the time to investigate. We could probably have Steve's amended punch list within
Yes.
the 90 days, so
Almost
we would know what we're actually
And
looking
possibly
at instead
divide
of
up-
shooting in the dark.
Right.
Can we divide up the permit too at that point?
Yes.
Cut off, okay.
So I
good.
think that's the
Yeah, yeah,
idea,
good.
just to give
Okay.
us the time to do the diligence to divide the permit. I mean, the stuff near Fairway, the boardwalk, that's going to get a 2-year extension, it just is.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
It
But
allows us
just-
to keep the feet to the fire so that the homeowners are protected.
Well, does it? Because that's my question. To the extent that the 90 days, that within that 90-day period, or any period, the land is transferred, we can ask them to fix it, but at the end of the day, we just hope and pray, right? It is a responsibility of the HOA at that point, is it not legally?
And then you'll probably want the 3-year extension.
So we can extend it into eternity until someone makes us do it, but this is, the bottom line here, unless I'm missing something, is outside of legal action. The authority's gonna turn over unimproved land that
I
needs.
think if you go with a 90-day extension, that would give us time to do the due diligence on it. There's clearly an issue as it relates to Dorset Park. I think it can be solved, but it's clearly not gonna be solved tonight.
Okay.
If we give them 90 days, and we're gonna take 90 days to assess. Do we need 90 days to assess? Because that means you're gonna get no work done this season.
Our intention is to continue to work with Northland and Mr. Ivis and take advantage of the season in front of us, even if we
But this
plan.
is the season, you've got, this is your 90 days to do that kind of work.
We're on it.
Can we cut back and
We're
give
on
them
it.
only 45 days with 45 days of potential action? Just throwing it out there.
It's up to the board, whatever timeframe you want to put on it. We will be revisiting this thing as soon as that next timeframe comes up. We'll be back for you.
What would be a realistic time frame for us to have Mr. Ivis's reassessment and for you to have had follow-up conversations with Northland? I think that that's what we want. Snow's melted now. I know Steve needs to go back out there, do the work. If that's all going to be done in 45 days, we might as well revisit it in 45 days. If it's going to take.
I fully expect to have it done within that timeframe.
Let's do that.
45.
They'll give you the tools to work with them.
I'll make a motion to approve the extension of the order of conditions of Phase 1A Development Plan, Mass DEP file number SE 081-1005 for a period of 45 days to and including the date of I just don't have 45 days out.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah,
45 days.
45 days is fine. Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, that's unanimous. Next item, treasurer's report.
Good evening. I've got 3 items before you tonight. First one is, it's brought to my attention by Jim that in negotiating going forward with getting work done for landscaping coming up this season, that the SLA, due to the fact that they have not been paid by LSTOP for the majority of their fees, has been unable to satisfy the contracts with both TNK and Schumacher. And because of that, we've also jointly signed on those contracts. And in order to negotiate forward to get them to do work to take care of the parkway, we need to make good on the fact that we also signed off on those contracts. With that, I need a transfer from free cash to the Parkway Maintenance Fund of $209,722.93. I still would like to treat that as a billable cost to Dartmouth. I'm not so sure whether they'll get anything from L-Star in the future, but I don't know that we should release that. But for now, I would like to at least take care of the bills and be able to negotiate forward and keep the parkway clear of any snow coming up for the next season, as well as get the landscaping done and retain the value of the property there.
I think that makes sense, and I agree with leaving it as an open account receivable with Dartmouth Group, because there are, you know, they may collect from L-Star, they may collect from a subsequent master developer to make good on those outstanding.
Too much.
So-
Question, was the contract by and between us?
Yes, and the vendor.
So it's basically on the parkway, the contract, we own the parkway, the contracts are between us and the vendor. The master developer is required to reimburse us for that work. The master developer assigned that obligation to reimburse us to the landowners association. And so we basically, I mean, our recourses would be to try to go after L-Star because they didn't fulfill their obligation to us, but that's bleeding, you know, that's getting blood from a stone. Or we can continue to pursue the Dartmouth Group, who currently doesn't have the assets and the LOA to pay us, but may have the assets under a new master developer.
Lindsay, I'm sure you'll rein me in if this is outside the scope of this agenda item, but this is retrospective. These are bills that have occurred that we've not been paid for, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So prospectively, perhaps as a new agenda item, it's not appropriate for tonight, but now that this entire expense has been foisted on landowners here, I think that we've now essentially got control of this landowner association last night, and the payers should have some input into these contracts and the level of maintenance that's being provided along the parkway.
I can speak to that, David, if you would.
Yep, absolutely.
The way the maintenance agreement for the parkway is set up is that the Southfield Landowners Association actually procures the vendor and draws up the contract for our approval.
Okay.
So the bidding and the contract language is all handled by the SLA because they were reimbursing those costs. So there is protection.
We do very
Perfect.
little
And so
other
that-
than to
and that-
ratify a contract that comes in
Perfect,
front
and that
of
would
us.
include level of maintenance of irrigation.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
right, if you
Yep.
wanna cut the mowing on the parkway
Yeah.
back to once every 2 weeks, that's SLA.
Perfect.
We are simply the contracting party as the owners.
Great. That is acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, legislation.
So I need a motion for that first
Yeah,
bill item.
I'll make a motion to transfer $209,722 from free cash to the general fund,
Parkway Maintenance.
to the
Fund.
Parkway Maintenance Fund, in order to satisfy outstanding invoices to our vendors.
And to treat,
And to leave it.
to transfer as a billable cost of that group.
And to keep it as a bill, I think we billed them and we're not going to forgive that debt, right? So there's
That would
really
be
no
my
action to
recommendation,
do.
right.
Is there an action item there?
It's all part of, if you look at the second, the first bullet item underneath the proposed motion there, the transfer,
Got it.
it's spelled out, if you just
Got
Do you add interest and penalties to that as well? Not that we're happy to get just the payment itself.
There's 12% that can be.
Perfect.
All right, now that I know this is written out, I'll move that the board of directors authorize the following transfers. Transfer of $209,722.93 from free cash to Parkway Maintenance Fund number 479, and to treat that transfer as a billable cost to the Dartmouth Group.
That's all you need to do.
Perfect.
Second it.
Any further discussion from the board? Obviously disappointing to be doing this, but we have to continue to maintain what's back here. We have no other way to recover the money, so. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous.
I have a second transfer request for $5,000 from the enterprise fund balance to other professional services, also within that same enterprise fund balance for testing. We've had a few expenditures in the enterprise fund, and I believe our original amount that you had done for that was a small amount of $8,000 at the beginning of the year, so we have spent minimal amounts out of that account. You did do a transfer previously for a continuation of the Pompeo water loop, but this is just for the ongoing expenditures in that fund. And I would appreciate if you could make a motion for the second bullet item.
Make a motion to transfer $5,000 from the enterprise fund balance to other professional services.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, that's unanimous.
Thank you. The next item is an adoption of Mass General Laws 40, Section 58. After the first paragraph is the actual motion on this. It has been brought to my attention that in order to do a lien on any of the property for items that are outside of real estate and personal property, you need to adopt this Mass General Law. And this is the wording that would need to be done to include master developer fees, along with the real estate and district personal property taxes as well. I've included in here a copy of the Mass General Law that pertains to it, as well as our legislation, which also allows us to have the same powers as towns and cities to adopt that same item of legislation.
So I think this is the right direction for us to go, just as a point of information. At this point in time where the land has been sold in a foreclosure auction, would there be anything practically for us to lien for our outstanding fees?
It's only proactive, it's not retroactive, so unfortunately we can only go forward with anything we build from here forward.
Got it.
I think it's
a good
great
idea.
direction to head forward.
It's the right direction. All right, I'll make a motion that the Southfield Redevelopment Authority accept Chapter 40, Section 58 of the Massachusetts General Laws, granting it the authority to impose a lien for district real estate and district personal property taxes and also master developer fees. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous.
The last item is a set of board of director bylaws, which have never been adopted by the board that I am aware of since you've been reformed as the SRA. I did some research into other authorities and pulled items from there. The beginning section of this is straight out of the enabling authority. For right after section 1, you'll see section 2 is directly out of your enabling legislation for that whole section. After that, there's an Article 2 for the officers, which basically establishes each of your positions and what the authority of each of them are and the duties of each of them are, as well as annual elections, what to do in the case of vacancies, the executive director's position, granting him also authority within that to contract for any contracts less than $50,000. There's also a section 3 after that, which gives you general provisions of basically notifying for meetings to the various towns, setting up an annual meeting for your annual elections, your regular meeting schedule the first and third Wednesdays of the month, an area that's set up in section 4 for special meetings for emergencies in case you have to do anything less than 48 hours, what would be constituted as a quorum, the order of business, which is strictly from what you've been using as your order of business already. The manner of voting is also and also including the ability for remote call-ins for your meetings, the approval of minutes, the ability for you to make amendments in the future to the bylaws, and having an annual review of financial items and making sure that you notify as required anyways. The Department of Revenue and the mayor of the town of Weymouth and the selectmen in both Rockland and Abington of the financial statements. And that the parliamentary authority for you would be the Robert Rules of Order. I put this before you. I know it's a lot of information for you to take a look at. I wouldn't expect a vote on it this evening, but I thought that I'd give it to you. I know that both Jim and Paul had a chance to review these items and made some comments and changes within them that I've incorporated already. I put it before you for your adoption whenever you see fit.
So, I personally think I need another meeting to review, another 2 weeks' time to review these, and I'd also like to discuss them with Paul as general counsel of the authority, just to make sure that we have the appropriate legal counsel review.
And that's all I have.
Can I just add to that, does this address the advisory board as well?
They have their own set of bylaws that have
Okay.
already been adopted.
Okay, can we see those two? Just for
Absolutely,
information?
yeah.
Anything else on this item? All right, next item, executive director's report.
Just have one update, that's an important one, because everyone knows the residential and commercial properties have been foreclosed on now by Washington Capital and related. Had discussions with Washington Capital and related, so we're hopeful that within the next 2 weeks we'll have a meeting with both of the lenders and the SRA to discuss process for selecting a new master developer. So I would keep you informed on that, and then.
And we plan to have that be a public
Very,
process.
yeah, very public process. And then, on another matter, the termination of the HealthStar's master developer will be, next week it'll run. So at the following, meeting, we have in 2 weeks, we're going to have to discuss what the roles and responsibilities of the master developer, what happens to those ongoing responsibilities, how many of those responsibilities come our way. And, there are some important things like leases and there are some obligations there too. But it's my opinion, I've conveyed this to Washington Capital, that I don't view their foreclosure as, doesn't put them in the position of being a buyer from HealthStar. Puts them, in my opinion, in being in the shoes of HealthStar. So they also have liabilities and potential responsibilities. Made Joe Kasagi aware of that, and he didn't really push back too hard. So trying to vet through who's responsible for what is something that we're going to need to discuss over the next 2 weeks.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
I have no additional topics. I'll take public comment on topics discussed at tonight's meeting. Yes, Brittany?
So I want to bring this up because it's very much related to the current process at Dorset Park that's happening. And I fully understand that this board is facing a lot of important complications from a lot of different angles. But I do also want to urge the board to take a really long, hard look at the bonding process, because it was just a few meetings ago that I wrote the letter to this board addressing the multitude of issues that happened at the development of Brookfield Village. And I normally don't claim to predict the future. However, I can see how this will happen in just a few short months, when the same exact situation will happen with Brookfield Village, and we will no longer have a bond to hold on to, because I will lose my strength at some point of fighting them. And so I just want to really urge this board to take a really hard, long look at what bonds are held on. And I spent a lot of time with Jim trying to understand the difference between the bonding process and the order of condition process. And this is not my area, and I've now learned more from Jim than I really care to, quite frankly. But I think the process really needs a good reboot. And you are the board protecting us from our developers. So that's all I want to say.
I'll say, I think that the bonding process has improved quite a bit, and we've, especially over the past year or so, made sure to have the bonds be quite broader. Unfortunately, what we're looking at when we look at something like tonight, we're looking at, 4-year-old bonds or more, and so I completely agree that a lot of improvements needed to be made to the process, and we learned some as we went along. And so I think, you know, well, I can say there may be similar problems with what you're doing. There won't be similar problems when Stonebridge is coming up, and I know that that's not a lot of solace, but I think that a lot of good processes have been put in place.
Yeah, most of the bonds were done, and I don't think any of us were on the board, or very few of us were on the board when that did happen. So we learn from what we see, and we will have more bonds that come up, and in the future, we put that as, especially with the homeowners associations, that we over bond rather than, you know, how do we make sure they're secure over bonded situation. And if we get some pushback from developers, they'll have to understand why. But the bonding is pennies on the dollar. So.
I think the problem was in most cases the bonding was adequate financially, but it wasn't adequate in terms of the breadth of things from which we could draw on the bond. And that's been an important lesson learned, because we've unfortunately had developers not do some pretty basic things that they just should have done before selling the houses or before turning the land over.
And maybe I'll clarify, because I'm not trying to place blame anywhere.
No.
I'm just saying
No,
that
I just want to reassure.
after I personally inspected the bond that was about to be released, it was not, right? It was almost 40-something% that was held back. So I'm not an inspector. I don't pretend to be. I don't play one on TV. I don't want to be, quite frankly. And most neighborhoods don't have someone that is fighting all the time for them. So no blame is placed anywhere, and you know, I'm sure these are old.
You can do bond. I know there are companies that, I mean, I'm in the insurance business, and there are companies that go out and do bond assessments, outside companies too as well. You can pay an outside company to come in, assess work done, assess where they are with the bond, and then give feedback on it.
And if we're having continued issues with relying on inspections from the town and internally, we can always look at getting vendors to look at those issues.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think in the future, I've talked to Jim about bringing in the engineering component for doing certain inspections on our side that the developer is required to pay for. And those types of things, whether it be Jim's time or a engineer, no matter what town it is, if it's in our footprint, then you look at passing that along to the developer. It's part of developer fees. It's completely legal to do.
Right, you have different security options at your disposal, and you can set different times of completions for different phases and give you some more checks and balances too. So it's all something that we should consider going forward.
And I met no resistance from this board or from Jim. I mean, everyone gave me a lot of time, but it's just, I don't necessarily feel like it was my responsibility to do that. So that's I guess my point.
How much is left on the Dorset Park bond?
104,000.
But it's
tied to very specific line
yeah,
items.
which is not the land behind the house.
So nothing is tied to the land behind the house.
There is no bond on that piece of it, correct?
I mean, I know in subdivisions, at least experience in Rockland, is that you subdivision, you bond public ways and your common areas, but you don't get into the actual physical lots, you know, the individual lots. To bond those individual lots it would not be, the bond companies you wouldn't even be able to get a bond on that.
But this is common area.
Common area, okay.
How about the street, Dorset Park Lane, is there money left on that?
Yes.
That is included within the bond.
Okay, because there is a lot of damage to that road that they made and not fixing.
The other consideration is the improvements may have been installed, but now time has gone by and there's been damage.
No, we saw their trucks do it, we told them, they refused to fix it.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, but we have limitations on when we can pull on the bond.
Okay.
We face this in the Highlands as well. If the conditions were satisfied, and then later a truck, whether belonging to them or someone else, did damage to it, that's something that they may very well be responsible for, and someone could bring a lawsuit, threaten lawsuit. We can't pull from the bond.
I'm just saying, like, 2 days after they paved it, their trucks did it. So, I'm just, there are a lot of issues.
There's also a street acceptance process by the towns at some point that would also have a punch list process whenever that time is, so.
Not in Dorset Park.
Not on the brow.
Not on the brow, correct. Right.
Anything else? Yes, Ms. Carson?
I have a question about, probably to Eric, about liens. does these bylaws trump the town's putting a lien on the land over here that the master developer had because they're behind on taxes?
I don't understand what you mean by Trump.
Th-
Do you
this
mean
just
as far
allows
as
us to
in
put a
order?
lien.
Yeah.
Pardon?
The towns can still put their tax liens on the land. This allows us to put a lien for the additional 50 cents as well.
Right, but the town's tax title lien eventually goes to the town taking over the property if they don't pay up the taxes.
It
It
works
has
in the
priority.
usual
It
course
has
of a
priority.
lien. Whoever, I mean, if the town beats us to lien in the
It'll-
property, they would have a,
Tax liens have priority. in
tax liens
bankruptcy.
have priority. Yep.
So they get,
And All Stars Current too, in Rockland.
Because they're already behind, at least as of a week ago.
I was just the tax collector last week and she's considering them current still.
Pardon?
The tax collector is considering them current right now.
Actually, I was there last week, and they're behind on
We're
February.
not getting into a back and forth. That topic wasn't covered at the meeting tonight. Anything else? Seeing none, our next meeting, I don't have a calendar in front of me, will be on April 3rd. I'll also make a motion for us to convene an executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, in particular our executive director, and tonight not to reconvene an open session.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Kevin? Oh, I've reviewed and reviewed with council the reasons for tonight, and having the discussion in public would be detrimental to the authority's bargaining positions.
The only thing is, if, I don't know what we've got planned, but if we're gonna take any action, we would have to come out of executive session to do it in public session. So if you're not planning on
I
taking
don't
any
plan to
action.
take any action tonight.
Okay, fine. I vote yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
David? Kelly? Yes.
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 Right. We'll take 3 minutes to clear the room.